What's poppin', everybody? Welcome back to the D.O.G podcast. My name is Drew. I'm with German and Nick. OC called out sick today because he's got a little scratchy throat, so can't afford to ruin his vocals for work. So we'll go a little bit over the group stage of the World Cup and go over kind of the teams that we thought were a little disappointing and the teams that are a little surprising. And then stick around for Nick's rant on why Greg Berhalter is the best coach in the world.
Yeah, man, USA, dude, go Stars and Stripes, and knocked out. I mean, really unsurprising, right? Against the Netherlands. I mean, just going down 3-0. It was, I guess, kind of disappointing because how well they played against England, and then to kind of just show that defensive back line just kind of just fall apart against the Netherlands. Nick, what did you think about the US in particular?
Um, in that game, the Netherlands were obviously one of the big heavyweights that were very beatable.
Hmm.
That team, Netherlands team, is kind of just skimming by, just doing enough to get through.
Hmm.
They haven't been very impressive for me, but I do think the U.S. they shot themselves in the foot, and the reason being was not because of the talent; it was the tactics that were implemented in that game.
Hmm. Yeah, because it almost seemed like they were even the first few games they had like the front they were like putting their right foot forward. Okay, they were attacking really well in the first half, but then like in the second half of games they would kind of just fizzle out, especially if Pulisic wasn't producing anything, which I feel like he didn't have the greatest World Cup. I think that he could have potentially had. There was moments where he could have sparked something or made a special play, and he really didn't do it. And I think it was just maybe just because of the lack of confidence due to the lack of playing time that he's getting at Chelsea. But what did you think tactically that they could have done different?
Going into this World Cup, we knew we had one of the youngest um, squads,
Mm-hmm.
average age, but and a lot of inexperienced players at the world stage. But the most inexperienced of them all was Greg Berhalter. Tactically, you know, in the four games they played, he didn't change anything at halftime
Mm-hmm.
tactically. The Wales game, they bottled it. We're up,
Right.
and they go into a defensive shell.
Mm-hmm.
They had majority of the ball against England. It was very surprising that we were on the
Mm-hmm.
front foot against England, a team that was in the Euros 2 years ago final,
Mm-hmm.
a team that could definitely make it to the World Cup final this cycle, and
Right.
we held them to a 0-0 draw. But then you go to play Iran in the last game, and it's win or go home. We get our goal, and then we drop back and defend,
Mm-hmm.
and that's not where we were at our best in this World Cup. Why are we bringing in players like Shaq Moore, to defend the
Right.
last 15 minutes of the match,
Mm-hmm.
when we could have defended with possession,
Mm-hmm.
kept the ball, kept attacking, look for the second or the third goal,
Right.
instead of just dropping back. So I think that's where Berhalter got it wrong,
Mm-hmm.
and ultimately he couldn't make the adjustment against Louis van Gaal in the Netherlands, and that's the reason why they were able to hit us on the
Mm-hmm.
counterattack, and beat us very very
Mm-hmm.
decisively.
Right. And then, well, I agree with you. I agree that they kind of just they went into a shell every time they went up one, even against Wales, where it's just like the first 15, 20 minutes, it looked like they were dominant. It looked like
Mhm.
they were going to score two or three, at least two or three more goals. And then the one goal goes in, and then that's it. They stop
Mhm.
attacking. Uh, didn't really open up anything against England, and then but then they didn't really open anything up to England as well. So I felt like they defended pretty well this World Cup. Um, I mean, they had a clean sheet going in when it came to open play, right? The goal
Mhm.
that Wales scored was a PK. And so going into the Netherlands game, I was expecting them to do the exact same thing. I was expecting a 0-0 draw and then go into PKs. And as we've seen with Morocco and Spain, once you get to PKs, anything can happen, right?
Mhm.
And so that's more or less what I was expecting. But once they got into that game, and then it looked like they were kind of putting their foot forward and advancing and getting some plays in, they kind of just opened up in the back and shut down against Bengal. or against the Netherlands and Bengal. Do you think, tactics aside, do you think it's just the talent class is just it's just way too big for the U.S. right now?
I definitely believe that the selection was wrong, and that
Mm-hmm.
comes back to the head coach. You've got you look at the Iran game, and Cameron Carter Vickers played over Walker Zimmerman. Walker
Right.
Zimmerman is the one who caused a penalty on Gareth Bale against
Mm-hmm.
Wales. Cameron Carter Vickers played because he's a better ball playing center back against
Mm-hmm.
Iran, and Berhalter knew they were going to have majority of the ball.
Right.
When we played against the Netherlands and they sat back in a low block, Walker Zimmerman and Tim Ream couldn't break a line with any pass. Why didn't he make that adjustment to bring in Cameron Carter Vickers,
Mm-hmm.
who is a better ball playing center back,
Right.
and change the game dynamically with one player?
Mm-hmm.
Um, the omission of John Brooks as well, who is a better ball playing
Mm-hmm.
center back than Tim Ream, leaving him off of the squad completely.
Right.
Berhalter made the comments that he didn't have a striker available to him like a Memphis Depay who's scoring goals in the Champions League. He
Yeah.
left Jordan Pickford off of the World Cup roster, who has in the last 2 years more Champions League goals than Memphis Depay.
Right.
So ultimately it comes down to the selection and to the tactics,
Mm-hmm.
and not the lack of experience for me.
Mm-hmm.
I will say Pulisic does have to finish that first chance in the first 3 minutes against the Netherlands. That's a
Right.
big letdown. You score that, and anything else can happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that's a lack of form. I don't think he's the United States' best player. For me, it's
Mm-hmm.
Tyler Adams. I think he's
Yeah.
the best player on the team. But where was Gio Reyna when we needed a goal?
Right.
Gio Reyna came in. He got 45 minutes against the Netherlands, and he only got 7 minutes against was it England, Iran? He only got
Yeah.
7 minutes, and he's probably the most talented attacking player that we have.
Right.
So ultimately, for me, it comes back down to Berhalter's lack of experience as a manager.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to me that was the biggest question mark. Is like, why isn't Gio Reyna playing
Hmm.
enough minutes? I mean, I think against Iran he didn't even play at all, which I feel like
Hmm.
he could have came in. He could have made a difference with securing yourself with another goal. Drew, what did you think about the U.S. performance of the World Cup?
Nick makes a lot of good points about
Mm-hmm.
Berhalter and the selection. My depth in the U.S. roster is not nearly as good as Nick's is. But I felt going into this World Cup, we just don't have the dudes to make a major impact.
Right.
And what they're really lacking is that guy that we were talking about, right? That number 9 that can finish anything in the box.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't need to be the best ball handler. He just got to finish. A Giroud, an Inter Lukaku. One of those guys that just finds a way to get in the 18 and just
Right.
score. And I think if the U.S. had that, things would be very different because,
Mm-hmm.
like we talked about, very surprising, the U.S. dominated possession in majority of their games. They controlled the wings very, very well, which seemed like that
Right.
was the game plan. But they sent in how many crosses that no one was ever able to get at the end of. I
Mm-hmm.
think in the Netherlands game at halftime, they sent in 16 crosses and only connected with 2 of those. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's terrible.
Right.
And I think that, granted, like I said, I don't know the depth of the U.S.'s options, but
Mm-hmm.
they're just missing someone like that. So my expectations were very minimal. Going into that Netherlands game, I was hoping for that 0-0 draw or 0-0 a matchup that we could go into PKs, and I thought that was the best opportunity, like you said,
Right.
for the U.S. to advance. I think in that little bracket pool that we did, I had the U.S. and Netherlands going 0-0.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's a step forward for the team. We got 4 years to figure it out. We got 4 years to find that guy that can finish in the box.
Right.
We can't get embarrassed like this on the U.S. soil in 2026.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, it'll be no longer be the excuse, we're young, we're inexperienced. We'll have a team that's more mature. They're in their prime, and they have that experience for them to make an impact. We'll just see what the federation does on who's going to be the head coach and who's going to be picking the teams by then. But all in all, I would call it slightly above average performance for the U.S. We would have loved to get better results, but I think for them to get out of that group, for them not to lose to England, and for the most part, have a fighting chance against the Netherlands was good. The Netherlands is just a far superior team. They really let the U.S. control possession, like Nick said. Van Gaal just
Right.
let them have the ball, and they beat us on the counter. That's
Yeah.
they scored 3 goals on the counter.
Mm-hmm.
So I chop it up to a decent World Cup. Um, the only thing that was very disappointing was the finishing opportunities in that Netherlands game.
Yeah.
Like Nick said, Pulisic's got to finish that first goal. Like
Right.
that completely changes the outcome of the game. The U.S. is up 1-0 after 3 minutes. Who knows? I mean, the U.S. could be playing tomorrow if he finishes that.
Right.
So yeah, my thoughts.
Let's go from I guess one disappointment to another, and let's talk about the team south of the border, Mexico, and arguably probably a more disappointing World Cup for them than the U.S. I mean,
Hmm.
Mexico didn't even make it out of the group, which was the first time since. Do you guys remember the which
It
World
was
Cup?
eight World Cups that they had advanced in a row.
Right.
Hmm.
Wow.
Which I mean, in a group where they easily could have done it, and I mean they were on the cusp of doing it, right? And then they ended up losing to the goal differential, right? Or
Hmm.
like the fair play differential,
Hmm.
something like that. What did you guys think about Mexico and their 3 games?
In my opinion, before Nick gets real big into he's very analytical. Let me go first so I can sound kind of smart until he goes. Um, it just seems like Mexico was flat like the first few games of the group stage. It didn't seem like
Right.
they were playing for anything. It seemed like they were very like we're Mexico. Like we're
Mm-hmm.
gonna make it out of the group stage. That's what we always do. And so they didn't have that urgency to really go in there and finish. Granted, I know a lot of people have been saying that this team was a terrible team. Like it wasn't picked properly.
Right.
There's a lot of Mexicans out there that could have done a lot better.
Yeah.
But then when you see Mexico, when it's like, hey, we got to have it now in that third and final group stage game, they showed up. They played well. I think if they could have just played with that urgency from the get go and going to that Poland game, things could have been a little bit different for them. Um, that's really what I saw. They didn't have the best players, but I still think they could have done better if they just
Right.
gave some more effort, I guess.
Nick, what do you think, man? Do you think maybe just Mexico just came out flat, or I mean, they could have picked a better team, or the
I,
tactics were just way off?
I think it's a combination of everything that you just
Mm-hmm.
mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
Mexico, if we're going to be honest, they haven't been good since 2019.
Right.
They lost the Gold Cup to the United States. They lost the Nations League to the United States. They didn't beat United States and Canada at home in the Azteca in World Cup
Mm-hmm.
qualifying. And a lot of it has to do with maybe the corruption in their federation right now. Tata Martino was supposed to resign 18 months ago, and
Yeah, something like that.
they didn't let him.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I know there's a big rift between him and a lot of players that he's blacklisted.
Right.
He left off some really good quality players like Santi Jimenez and Diego Lainez that they could have used those guys,
Right.
you know, in these games. The goal difference was a big one, and
Mm-hmm.
when you leave Santi Jimenez off and he's the leading goal scorer in the Europa League at the moment,
Right.
why would you not take him?
Mm-hmm. Or like
When
a flair like Diego Linus,
Diego
who's
Lainez, who's very
playing at a top
pacey, he's
level.
gonna come
Right.
and he's gonna give everything for the shirt.
Mm,
And choosing Raúl Jimenez, who's hasn't played any minutes, who's in a with the Wolverhampton team that's last place in the Premier League
right.
with no goals. So it's one of those things, kind of like similar to Berhalter, where he's blacklisted players. The game against Argentina, why he didn't start Edson Alvarez and he went with the back
No
five,
idea.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's mind-boggling. Mexico is that type of team, and you think about the last World Cup when they went and beat Germany. They took that game to Germany. They
Right.
feared nobody,
Hmm.
and it was like Tata Martino was like, "Let's keep the game close, and then we'll just
Mm-hmm.
hope for help." In the last day of the group stage,
Mm-hmm.
and they didn't get the help.
Right.
Argentina didn't score that extra goal that they needed against Poland. And it's sad because this might be the last time we see Memo Ochoa in a World Cup, and
Right.
his heroics against Poland. It's a classic
Mm-hmm.
Memo Ochoa World Cup performance.
He
Right.
deserves better for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was rooting for Mexico. I never root for Mexico, but it's good to see CONCACAF succeed in the World Cup.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted them to do a lot better, but they definitely need to find the right coach and start bringing in young talent, and get ready for the next cycle.
Yeah, because I mean, considering how big of a sport Mexico or soccer is in Mexico, like for you to produce that amount of talent and not be able to do anything with it, it's kind of weird. If you look back at their this World Cup, they didn't even score a goal from open play. Both goals came. One was monster free kick,
Mhm.
and then the other one was off a corner kick. So it's kind of weird, especially like you said, when you leave creative players back at home, you don't even bring them for what, and you leave probably arguably your best player on the bench against Argentina, right?
Mhm.
Like that doesn't make any sense. And then I mean, even that game against Argentina, they look kind of dominant, kind of like how the US did against Netherlands. And then just Messi just needed an ounce of space and then just slaughtered it home.
You
Like
know,
he,
the game changed. The Argentina game changed when Guardado had to come off in the 41st minute.
right,
So it forces you not only to use a sub but to use a substitution window.
right,
If you start with Edson Alvarez, regardless if the Tata had said he didn't play because he didn't practice a part of the back five. This guy is one of the top players in Europe,
mm-hmm,
playing with a very good Ajax team. It
right,
doesn't matter what the tactics are. He's a professional footballer.
right,
He should have started, and you give your team a fighting chance.
right,
Guardado had no business being in that team. If he was on the
mm-hmm,
bench, there for veteran leadership, fine. But against
mm-hmm,
Argentina, against that midfield, against Messi, he wasn't going to do the job.
right.
That's where
Mm-hmm.
Tata failed for sure.
Oh yeah, for sure. Uh, like you said, I think it's a mixture of all kinds of things that's wrong with Mexico right now, including the talent pool. It to me it doesn't seem like there's as much talent coming out of Mexico as there was before. Am I wrong? Do you think differently?
There's definitely some talent, but I do think the players that are in Liga MX,
Mm-hmm.
they get overpriced by their club teams in Mexico,
Mm,
so
right.
they could get sold for a higher wage.
Mm-hmm.
I think that these guys need to just venture out and go to Europe and play
Mm-hmm.
in the Dutch league, play in the Premier League if they can, play in the Bundesliga,
Right.
and then but at a younger age. We shouldn't have
Mm-hmm.
Mexico players leave Monterrey or Chivas when they're 26 years old. They
Right.
should be leaving at 17, 18 years old,
Mm-hmm.
getting that experience, because how many Champions League players does the United States have every week versus how many Champions League players does Mexico have every week?
Right. Right. Okay, guys. So outside of those two teams, to you guys, who do you guys think has been the most disappointing country or big country in the World Cup so far? Let's go with Drew first. What do you think, man?
Well, there's a few of them. I mean, if we're
Mm-hmm.
just talking about the group stage, I think Germany is probably the biggest one. I think Denmark is pretty disappointing, also
Right.
not getting out of the group stage. Moving into the teams that moved on to the round of 16, Spain losing that game, that's brutal.
Right.
Like they from game one to the elimination game, they're completely two different teams. Like they
Mm-hmm.
weren't even close. What, they put up like 7 goals or 6 goals in the first game,
Right.
and then they turn into this 0-0 draw and to get blanked in PKs. Like that's ridiculous. Like
Mm-hmm.
you can't do that, especially to a Moroccan team.
Right. What about you, Nick? Who do you think's been more disappointing?
Yeah, for me, my dark horse pick for the World Cup before it started was Germany, and they were very disappointing.
Right.
Give credit to Japan; they're a very good, well organized, very defensively organized team. That hit Germany on the counter attack. And won the game in the second half.
Right.
But that Germany Spain game, very chess match like game with
Mm-hmm.
no goals, and it could have been a deciding moment for both of those teams. But yeah, I was very disappointed with Germany for the quality that they
Mm-hmm.
have. They definitely should have gotten out of that group.
I mean, for sure. I mean, but I mean, let's give credit to Japan because they also had Croatia on the ropes in the round of 16s.
Hmm.
And had they just had, I guess, better penalty kickers. I mean, once you get to PKs, you never know what's going to happen, right?
Right.
It's almost like flipping a coin. Um, but yeah, I mean, Japan held their own. I mean, they took it to Spain and they took it to Germany too. They beat two powerhouses off of the power of friendship. I don't know. I don't know how else they did it. Like it's crazy. But I mean, Drew brought up another one. Denmark, highly disappointing, especially that the group where they're in, and Australia. All credit to Australia, right, for pushing forward, even though they got knocked out a round later. Give it to them, you know. But I think a really disappointing team has been Belgium, right? Given the group that they were in too. Um, Drew, what's up with your boy, dude?
They're
Kevin De
old.
Bruyne.
Just chop it up to their old. Hazard retired from the national team yesterday.
Right.
That's all it was. They got past that Canada game based off of experience, and then matching up with the Croatian team. They're just old. I mean, they've got great players. 4 to 8 years ago, they were great players. Now they're just old. They can't keep up with the pace. Super unfortunate that Lukaku couldn't save or couldn't make a goal to save his life. Like that guy came in for what 15 minutes and had every opportunity in the world. He could have walked away with a hat trick, honestly.
Right.
And he walked away with no goals, and Croatia or Belgium was sent home. I think I text the group chat with Nick right away that Mitchie should have been the guy that went in. Mitchie knows how to finish, and he's a little bit younger, got some more pace than Lukaku.
Right.
But that's all it really is their experience can only take them so far before their age caught up to them.
Right. And I think another team that's been kind of disappointing, and give me 1 second. Another team that was kind of disappointing, and I thought was going to make a run, was Uruguay. I mean, they didn't even make it out of the group either. Nick, what did you see out of Uruguay? Do you think they were just tactics were just played out, or just not enough talent?
No, I think they're kind of in the same situation as Belgium. You're relying on Luis Suarez, who arguably for me, Luis Suarez is a top 10 player of all time.
Really?
You know, and Cavani is just a little too old, you know, their age. In the back line, they had Godin, who's, you know, up in age as well.
Yeah.
It's probably the last World Cup for a lot of these guys.
Right.
Um, you know, I think that it was just one of those cycles for them that, you know, this was kind of their, you know, farewell tour, just like Belgium's golden generation. You know, and Ghana and that group was pretty difficult.
Right.
So
I guess Ghana getting a little bit of revenge on Luis Suarez, dude.
yeah,
Yeah.
The country could just never get away from that guy. Let's talk about the next round. Who do you guys think was the biggest disappointment in the round of 16 that kind
Spain.
of knocked out
Spain.
Spain?
Yeah, so
Go
I
ahead,
think
Drew.
single-handedly Spain. Everyone else, I mean, yeah, I'm just checking all the teams. Make sure I got all the teams. Yeah, I think everyone else was pretty obvious and clear. Obviously, we're all hoping for the U.S. to pull through, but I picked the
Right.
Netherlands, so I would either get that pick right or I would be disappointed but happy at the same time that the U.S. won. But Spain, you got to win that game.
Right.
You're trying to become the elite team, the elite country again, like you used to be in 2010, and you can't lose to a game like Morocco, or to a team like Morocco. So I think they're just the big disappointment so far. Everything else has played out the way I expected it to.
What about you, Nick? You agree, or you think another team?
yeah, no, I definitely agree. I do think Spain in the round of 16, besides the United States, was probably the biggest disappointment. When you have a team like Spain who completes over 1,000 passes in a match but can't score a goal,
Right.
you know, it's sideways and backwards. I think Luis Enrique got that one wrong. You left off Sergio Ramos. If you look at how Pepe is performing in this World Cup with Portugal, um, you leave off Sergio Ramos because of his age. You know, I think he's still one of the best center backs in the world. And you start Sergio Busquets, who's up in age as well. When you have
Right.
Rodri on the bench,
Right.
who could have been a better CDM, a better
Mm-hmm.
playmaker with Gavi and Pedri in the midfield. And I do think that Spain is lacking a true finisher as well. I know Morata got a lot of goals. I'm not really a big fan of his,
Mm-hmm.
but I do think that if they had somebody more clinical, they could have a lot more opportunities. They need somebody like a David Villa, type of player who would go
or
and grab
for
all of those goals,
or
you
Fernando
know,
Torres.
or Fernando Torres, absolutely, yeah. So even a Diego Costa, like they
Oh
needed
yeah.
one of those players
Mm-hmm.
again. I don't think Morata is that guy to lead them to the promised land.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Spain was highly disappointing, but I mean, we also can't take any credit away from Morocco, right? I
Right.
mean, they kind of just
Right.
they held on 0-0. They didn't give anything up. Hakimi had a great game. Like I don't know if you guys were watching him, but I mean, he's making an argument to being the best right back in the world right now. Um, he played really well. I mean, and then they just didn't give anything up. And then once you get to PKs, you anything can happen, right? And let's give credit to Morocco, which I mean they go on and they move on and take on Portugal, which Portugal coming off a huge win, leaving Cristiano Ronaldo on the bench, but the young kid Ramos comes in and scores a hat trick. Uh, are we going to go ahead and see the same thing out of Portugal, or we're going to see a little bit more of Ronaldo coming forward? Do you guys think?
If it's not broke, don't fix it.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. Ramos on his World Cup debut gets a hat trick. You have to go with the guy that's hot, the guy that's putting
Mm-hmm.
the ball in back of the net.
Right.
Doesn't mean that Ronaldo doesn't have a role to play in this Portugal team.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I will say, watching Manchester United with Cristiano Ronaldo and without, watching Portugal with Cristiano Ronaldo and without, it's almost two entirely different teams when
Right.
he's off of the bench.
Mm-hmm.
I do think, and it's sad to say that if Portugal is going to continue to have success in this tournament, Ronaldo
Mm-hmm.
has to start on the bench,
Right.
and let the other guys press and press. And when you need to chase a game and you need a goal, who
Mm-hmm.
other than Ronaldo do you want to have,
Right.
in your back pocket? You want to have that option to bring him on later.
Almost like a
So
super sub.
absolutely,
It's not a
I
bad
mean,
super sub. One of the greatest of all time to ever
good.
do it.
Yeah.
could you guys imagine that storyline if Argentina and Portugal were to get to the World Cup and then Ronaldo subbed on at a 0-0 game at the 79th minute? You,
Mhm.
I mean, you
Sounds
can't
fake.
write better shit like that. I
It
know,
sounds
right?
fake.
It
Yeah.
sounds fake, but I mean, could you imagine?
Yeah.
I mean, but if you look at the teams that are left and like some of the storylines that we have here, I mean, who knows? What if Morocco makes a run, becomes the first African country to lift the World Cup? Ronaldo or Messi right off into the sunset, right, lifting their cup. Same thing with Neymar, bringing Brazil their sixth World Cup. England finally bringing it home. France going back to back, and the Netherlands winning their first one. Like it's just the teams that we have left. I mean, it's pretty interesting, right?
Yeah, there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of backstories there with a lot of
Right.
those teams.
Mm-hmm.
But you can only have one winner, and I think it's going to be Brazil.
You still sticking your guns to
I'm
Brazil?
still sticking my guns to Brazil. Yeah.
What about you, Nick?
Yeah, I originally chose Brazil to win it,
Mm-hmm.
facing England in the final, and I'm pretty confident that those are the two teams.
Mm-hmm.
It's it's going to be hard for England to get through France this weekend, um,
Right.
especially Mbappe is on fire. But yeah, I'm going to stick with my original pick, Brazil, to win the World Cup. The way that they've been playing,
Mm-hmm.
having fun, enjoying themselves,
Right.
um, and their bench can start for any country in the world.
Right.
It's just insane the amount of depth that they have. And in tournaments like this, you definitely need the depth.
Right.
So yeah, I do think Brazil is going to win.
It's kind of fun watching Brazil. I mean, it's almost like watching like the 2006 Brazil when there was like Ronaldinho,
Mhm.
Kaká, Ronaldo. Like it's like all these big star names, and like the way they're playing, right? Like I feel like all their goals against what was it against South Korea all had that Brazilian flair to it, right?
Mhm.
Hmm.
Like with which one was it? Richarlison, the one they were he juggled it outside the box and couple of passes and then just slaughtered it home. That clinical Brazil, right? Um, but the big game to look out for, I think, is the England and France game. I feel like whoever wins that game is more than likely going to make it to the final. What do you guys think?
Um, I think it completely depends on which Harry Maguire England gets. Do they get England Harry Maguire or do they get Manchester United Harry Maguire? Um,
Are they going
let's
to
be
have Harry
honest,
Maguire
France.
marking up Mbappe and see who wins that
Um,
50-50 ball on the run?
France has got a really good attacking team, and I think England's got a very good defending team. Um, and so I think England's just going to have to kind of figure out how to win the game on the counter. And with that being said, as long as you can hold back Mbappe, they're going to do just fine. So it really depends on
Right.
which Harry Maguire shows up.
What do you think, Nick?
Yeah, for me, it's going to depend on whoever dominates the middle of the field. You know, who has the better midfield trio? Is it England with Declan Rice and Jude Bellingham,
Right.
or is it France with Chouamani, with Rabiot? So whoever wins the midfield battle, I think, wins the game. They both have quality up front. You know, Harry Kane hasn't had a great World Cup so far, but it's Harry Kane.
Right.
He'll find a way to score.
Mm-hmm.
Phil Foden has been very impressive when he's been on the pitch,
Mm-hmm.
and Marcus Rashford loves a goal against France. So you know, Kyle Walker is going to have his hands full with Mbappe. But if there's anybody on that England back line that can keep the pace with Mbappe, is Kyle Walker.
Right.
So it's going to be a fun, interesting game. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's cool to see the matchups. I mean, that could also be a substitute for the final, right? England versus France. It's an interesting game.
Mhm.
Anything else you guys want to add? Anything? Any talking points you guys want to bring up?
Where are we at on the Golden Boot race? Mbappe is running away with it.
I think
For Mbappe, 4 or 5 goals,
Five.
5 goals. Yeah,
yeah. Mbappé's got 5. Morata, who's out, was the next guy in 3, but the one still in it was Zaka with 3. The kid
Rashford
Gakpo,
from
with
the
three,
kid from
Gakpo with
the
3,
Gapo from 3. The kid from the
Giroud with
Netherlands.
3,
Ramos with 3,
Richarlison with 3.
Leo Messi with 3, Giroud with 3, Richarlison with 3. So,
hmm
I mean, it really just comes down to the England France game. That's really going to be the one. If Mbappe can honestly score at any given moment, so you honestly just don't know. And then, but the question is, are they going to be able to hold off England long enough with all the attacking players that England has too? I'm expecting a shootout, hopefully, maybe like a 3-2 shootout, something like that. That'd be awesome to watch.
Oh yeah. So if Mbappe, say France wins the World Cup, Mbappe
Mm-hmm.
wins the Golden Boot, is he a lock for Ballon d'Or?
No, it's
Who's your
just,
Ballon d'Or winner?
it's just the thing with Mbappe. I think that's just it's just holding him back is playing at PSG and playing in France. If he's going to be a Ballon d'Or winner, he's got to prove it in one of the big leagues. He's definitely. I mean, he had his chance to go to Spain with Real Madrid. After this, who knows what's going to happen if he's going to stay at PSG, try to drag him to the Champions League at this point because he's really not getting much help. Um, but it's honestly it's up to his regular season play, which for PSG this year hasn't been all that great. I think Benzema has still been outshining him when it comes to club football. So, what do you guys think?
I think it gets a foot in the door for him. I think
Mm-hmm.
it builds momentum for him moving into January and that second half of the league. You never know. I mean, if he just continues this run, he could be the Ballon d'Or winner. I mean, no one has really stuck out in my mind who has just really taken over Europe.
Let's not forget about Holland here, dude. He's beasting it over in the Premier
You're
League.
right. You're right.
He's on track to get a record, a goal scoring record there in the Premier League in his first season in the Premier League. So
But I
Holland
think
might be a better player than him right now.
if you win the French league and you also win the World Cup and you're the number one player on both teams, I think that outweighs winning just one domestic league.
But okay, so we all know that PSG is more than likely going to win their league or the League One. let's talk about the Champions League. What if Holland ends up winning the Premier League and the Champions League? Then what then?
That then he makes a good race for it.
Right.
Um, I just the big difference between the two is if I were to take Mbappe out of PSG, PSG is not going to be nearly as good as what they are. If I'm going to take Holland out of Man City, Man City is still going to be pretty fucking good. Holland's great, and I picked Holland to win the Golden Boot for the Premier League this year.
Mm-hmm.
But I think just when we're talking overall value to their club and to the national team right now, I think it's Mbappe.
What do you think, Nick?
Um, it I'm torn because without without Benzema, does Mbappe still shine? And if we think about 4 years ago in the last World Cup, he did.
Mm-hmm.
He carried because there was no Benzema 4 years ago.
Right.
Um, I think if now that Benzema is injured, missed the World Cup, Mbappe wins the Golden Boot in the World Cup, goes back to back for the first time in over 60 years.
Mm-hmm.
Um, France goes back to back. They're gonna win the French league. They're probably gonna win the domestic double. And if he makes a semifinal or a final appearance in the Champions League, for me, he has to be a lock for Ballon d'Or.
Mm-hmm.
If Haaland scores 50, 60 goals in the Premier League, which is unheard of, he definitely puts his name in the hat. But what is Haaland doing at the international level?
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, he comes from a country where they might not ever play in the World Cup.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think in order for Haaland, he has to smash the Premier League goal scoring record in the first season and win Champions League and win the Premier League, which is a difficult task for him to do that.
Which, I mean, he's kind of on the track of doing that, right? I mean, because you never know what City can do, especially since they have so much players that are home already from the
Mm-hmm.
World Cup. So, I mean, you never know what they can do when it comes to the Premier League, and he looks like he's on track to smashing that record. And I think it just comes down to the Champions League because even if Mbappe wins, say he wins the World Cup, he you know runs away with the Golden Boot. I still think it comes down to what he does in the Champions League because I feel like a lot of those voters really just look at the Champions League as a more prestigious award versus the World Cup, which I know doesn't make any sense, doesn't make any sense to me, but I think it's because maybe they see the Champions League as being a little bit more difficult to win versus the World Cup, right? Because I mean, the World Cup is more of a tournament, and the Champions League you have to kind of push through an entire season to get there, and you get the two knockout games, not just the one. Because I mean, you could get. I mean, what if Spain and Morocco had gone to a second game, right? You never know what could happen then. And so I think that's maybe why. I mean, if Mbappe wins the Champions League and he's the top scorer in that tournament too, then for sure he runs away with it, right? No
Yeah.
question about it, for sure. But I think right now it's still a toss up, maybe between him and Holland. And who's to say if PSG do win the Champions League and they give it to Messi just because? I mean, we've seen crazier things, right?
Yeah.
Anything else you guys want to add, or is that about it?
Do you want to go over picks for this weekend's games real quick?
Sure. Yeah, we can go ahead and we do that. I'll go ahead. I'll pull it up. I just had it right now. Let's go with the first game tomorrow, right? Croatia and Brazil. Who do you guys have?
Brazil.
Brazil.
I have Brazil too.
Yeah, Brazil across the board. Let's see. The second game on Friday, Netherlands and Argentina. That one's
I
kind of
have
a
the
toss-up.
Netherlands. I'm going Dutch.
Nick?
Yeah. It's close. That's gonna be an interesting matchup. Um, it's a hard pick. I just think the Dutch right now are just edging out Argentina offensively.
Right.
Cody Gakpo and Dumfries and Memphis. They might have a little bit better front three than Argentina, but we've seen Messi, pull a moment of magic out of nowhere.
Right.
So you can't count them out. But it's going to be a close one. I think the Dutch edged them out.
I've also seen Messi let Argentina down plenty of times.
It's true.
Probably more times than him actually being a hero, especially that the Netherlands have a certain guy called Van Dijk. They're playing in the back, who has been the kryptonite for Messi in the Champions League, right? Yeah, I think I'm gonna go with Netherlands. I think this was gonna be a close one. Do you guys think that one's gonna go to extra time or no?
I don't.
No, Nick.
I'm probably gonna go 2-1 Netherlands.
I think it's a 1-0 game for me. When do they score? I'm not too sure. Could be in overtime. Um, I think it's going to be a very close game.
Yeah, I think it'll be a close game, and I'm expecting extra time with that one.
Mhm.
Let's go ahead. Let's go to the next one. Morocco and Portugal. Who do you guys got? Another tough one.
Uh, I'm gonna go with Morocco. I'm gonna ride with the hot team.
Okay, Nick.
Yeah, I think Portugal's experience is going to show through. Bruno Fernandes has been class this World Cup.
Right.
Bernardo Silva as well. So, and this group of Portuguese players, they've been to and won a Euro Cup, and I think the experience, they can live in that moment. The moment for Morocco might be a little too big. I think Morocco is a very exciting team, but I think Portugal's experience is going to help them win this game.
Yeah, I think so too. I think this is probably the bottom or the end of the Cinderella story for Morocco. I think it's about to strike midnight for them.
Ziyech is gonna have the winning goal.
You think so?
Watch.
You want to put money on that one or no?
No, I'm not gonna put money on it. I'm just telling you guys.
We'll do a gentleman's bet and we'll do a beverage or something. But let's go into the high anticipated one: England and France. Who do you guys got?
England.
England. Ooh, Nick.
Yeah, I have England going to the final. Um, I have to stick with England. I think for some reason they'll be able to pull it out. England knock out France in the last Euros? They
Uh,
were they in the same group?
Who? That is a tough one.
Couldn't tell you.
I couldn't tell
Can't
you.
remember. I didn't watch a lot of the Euros.
I remember France getting grouped in the Euros.
Yeah, that's right. I think you are right. I'm not sure if they were in the same group. I don't know. I think it's too much to go back and look it up right now. Yeah, but
We're gonna get a thumbs down for that one.
just for that one, just for being unprepared. I mean, who knows? I mean, if the thing is, England have so much firepower up front, and they played really well when they could put it all together. So you never know what kind of England team you're gonna get. I feel like it's up in the air with them. And then France, I feel like you know what you're gonna get. You're gonna get Mbappe coming down your throat. He's relentless. He's fast, and he creates so much space. It's ridiculous. But I'm thinking England's probably gonna edge them out on this one. I think I'm gonna agree with you guys. All right, so I guess we'll go ahead. We'll find out tomorrow and on Saturday.
we agreed on every pick except for the Morocco pick, huh?
I think
I'm the oddball out, huh?
You're the only one riding with them, dude. You like
Okay.
an underdog story, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, man. Nick, thanks for coming by. We'll
No
definitely have
problem.
you on again when we go ahead and we see probably Brazil lift the World Cup if everything goes to plan. But I mean, with this World Cup, nothing's fucking gone to plan. Like everything's even like the surprising picks we tried to make didn't work out. So we'll see what happens. So go ahead, Drew. You want to go ahead and close it out, man?
All right, everybody. Thanks for watching. Nick, thanks for coming on, our footballer expert. We'll catch you guys on the next one. See if we're able to narrow down these picks, and if hopefully Ziyech can make me a genius.
Yeah,
We'll see what
Berhalter out.
happens.
Berhalter out, huh?
Yeah.
And it's called soccer, Drew. Get it right, dude.